What's up? Thanks so much for clicking on this video. We're going to talk about kind of a zany trade idea that I threw out. More of a trade concept that I threw out on the Twins Off Daily podcast. I want to expand upon that in a video today and tomorrow. But let's just jump in.
My prediction
what I
is
said.
The first trade that the Twins make leading up to the trade deadline will appear as a sell trade, and everyone will lose their minds. I don't know if it's like trading Max Kepler for what appears to be, just getting rid of him because he's on an expiring contract or something like that. But they will make a sell-looking trade and then turn around and acquire like a starting pitcher like a week later after everybody's, torches have burned out.
This is not something I hope is going to happen, certainly, but this is something I can see potentially Derek Falvey and company kicking around the idea of, because they are probably going to be once again handicapped by the payroll situation. That is me kind of speculating. Now, to be clear, the Twins, we haven't seen any official reporting on this, but I sort of floated that idea out on the podcast as well, that the Twins are pretty limited in, they want to improve the roster, I'm sure, the front office. But I want to push attention instead of what I said on the podcast, because Cody Christie at Twins Daily just did a better job fleshing this out more in an article that he asked, will lower than anticipated attendance and payroll limitations impact Twins trade deadline? My answer is, I expect absolutely yes. And I think if you agree with me, or at least can follow that line of thinking, this is going to make a lot more sense as we go here. So something that Cody did a great job too is throwing some actual numbers out there with this. Calling out that during the winter, the Twins talked openly about expecting an increase in attendance. Then he throws out some figures there, when in reality, attendance is down nearly 1,200 fans. And, there's a lot of other pieces of the puzzle on how they generate revenue and all that. But we know what the situation was this offseason with the payroll getting cut. Putting it bluntly, the payroll was cut pretty significantly. Derek Falvey had to make some moves to create payroll space so they could spend in free agency to address some issues. I could see that being possibly what they have to do again. I hate that that's potentially the case, but that might be what it is. And what's the kind of easiest thing from a standpoint of trying to open up some payroll and not really kill your major league club right now you could do? I'm not the only person that's called this out. Max Kepler, LaValle Neal III had this article recently at the Star Trib saying it's time for the Twins to get what they can for Max Kepler. Matthew Taylor at Twins Daily recently wrote why the Minnesota Twins should explore trading away Max Kepler at the trade deadline. So this is not really me throwing out a very original idea, but I am going to both kind of talk about the money side, because I think that is really a big reason why, and also throw out an actual trade idea, a very specific trade idea. But I do want to make it clear, we are just kind of throwing concepts out there. This is basically baseball fanfic, baseball fan fiction. And again, I don't necessarily want to see the Twins have to do this, but I'm just kind of there hasn't been games in a couple days. My baseball brain is going a little crazy. So, Max Kepler was making $10 million this season. We're about 60% of the way through the season. My Burt Blyleven California math says that's about $4 million left. That's not significant, but that basically means you've created space to acquire another guy that was making around $10 million, essentially, assuming that you can do that. Now, we're not going to go down the completely dystopian storyline of what if Derek Falvey and company are told just to find a way to cut $4 million from the payroll. That could be a thing. I don't even want to speculate there, though. So we'll assume that they're going to create that space to do something else. I want to talk about this space creating today and then the something else tomorrow. So Max Kepler getting traded. Here's the problem. He doesn't have much trade value. Max Kepler doesn't have all that much trade value. You have to find someone that wants to take on that $4 million, because the Twins ain't going to cover that. And, he's a free agent at the end of this season, so it's not like a team is getting him as a long-term solution. He's going to be a free agent after the end of the season. And he hasn't played that great this year. It does add up to a 100 WRC plus league average. Not great, especially for a right fielder, but Max Kepler is still a very good right fielder. A lot of the other stuff that he did well last year is not showing up. You see that in the baseball savant sliders in the middle. But still, I mean, this is kind of reasons we can look at him from a Twins standpoint and say they could live without him. But it's crazy how many teams have really bad lineup situations. And, the Twins have been one of, if not the best lineup in baseball since the start of May. So it almost is like, you look at Max Kepler and these numbers that he's put up and they're so bad, but another team is like licking their chops. Again, the value isn't crazy because he's on an expiring contract, but I do think he has a market for sure, especially being a veteran guy. You never know with guys who haven't been around as long. And I know Max Kepler has been a Twin his whole career, so it would be a pretty big adjustment potentially for him to go into another clubhouse. But I think he's a pro. He's been around the game a long time. He kind of realizes things are what they are. So what team and what return? What are we talking about here? Trading Max Kepler. You're not getting, I don't think you can get major league help realistically for Max Kepler. Maybe a reliever, but then again, you have to find, if you want to open up that $4 million, you have to find a relief pitcher that's not making any money. Well, a relief pitcher that's not making any money likely has a bunch of team control. So what team out there is competitive and wants to add and has a young reliever pitching well that they're willing to part with multiple years of team control for a couple months of Max Kepler? I don't really see that being a thing. So yeah, this would look like a sell trade because I would be trading Max Kepler to the Atlanta Braves for Ian Mejia. Now that's I heard all the who's coming through. We'll talk more about him in a sec. But first off, Atlanta, look at this lineup. They don't have Ronald Acuna. And maybe some people would say, well, that's a reason they shouldn't really invest anything. Well, they did it a couple of years ago and they won the World Series without Ronald Acuna. So I think they would like to continue to improve this team, but maybe not go all in. You can see Adam Duvall is their current starting right fielder. He's 35 and having a really bad year. He's a right-handed hitter too, so him and Max could be, kind of a platoon. So I think Kepler could really help. That outfield is in rough shape. Eddie Rosario, they just claimed off release waivers, I think, getting him back into their org, and he's a platoon, their primary platoon guy and left at the moment. So they could use some help. Ian Mejia, this guy, you can see he's ranked 23rd at Baseball America, but I should call out, you won't find him on, I don't think, any other prospect list. Baseball America is, I think, the only place that has this guy on their prospect list for the Braves. Even then, he is their 17th pitching prospect. 17 of their top 23 prospects are pitchers. So I think this is a case where they could, even though he's the number 23 prospect, you could ask them about Ian Mejia and they would be like, okay, yep, go ahead. Because they have so many other guys in their organization in front of this guy. This is an 11th round pick from the same draft class as Andrew Morris, Zebby Matthews, Corey Lewis, CJ Culpepper, that class. So he's kind of a cohort with those guys. We're going to cherry pick his best start, probably the best start of his life. But I just want to show you some video to see who we're talking about here. The slider is his marquee pitch by far. He also throws a fastball that's around 92 usually. It's really nothing special in terms of velo. And then I think a split change. This was a game in which he struck out 11 batters and threw a 7-inning no-hitter. In the minors, when they have a rainout and play a doubleheader, they play 2 7-innings games. So it was a 7-inning no-hitter, but pretty amazing outing for him in Double-A here. Just kind of wanted to show you some highlights, some video of what we're talking about in Ian Mejia, and this is just really fun to watch. And the guys, you can tell like the baseball code doesn't have rules on how to celebrate a 7-inning no-hitter. Like, do we do the thing or do we not do the thing? But they eventually got into it and got the Gatorade out and all that. Just a fun moment. And, that's not the primary reason why I've honed in on this guy. I think it is a situation where he is a little bit more acquirable than he would be in another org because Atlanta has so much pitching. You can see he's primarily been at Double-A, been one of the best pitchers in the Southern League, same league that the Wind Surge play, the Twins Double-A team. Did get called up after that no-hitter, actually. Got called up for a spot start in AAA and got destroyed, for what that's worth. But on the year, a 2.89 ERA, a 1.19 whip, 9.2 K per nine. Guy throws a ton of strikes. And this is kind of the key part of, does this improve the 2024 Minnesota Twins Major League team? No, it does not. Not going to stretch that anyway. You wouldn't want this guy eventually coming up this season. But adding another piece to the rotation depth picture, along with Zebby Matthews, who was just promoted to AAA, along with Andrew Morris, who's pitching really well since he was promoted to AA, along with a bunch of guys, would really help ease any concern they might have related to converting guys like maybe Louis Varland or even David Festa into relievers. I didn't put this on the script here, but maybe even Chris Paddock, which that's going to be more of a conversation in the next step video we talk about tomorrow. But any more rotation depth that you can add in the high minors, even if it's somebody who you don't really anticipate being ready this year, could help that, because you're thinking about next year with starting pitching. You're always thinking about next year too, and what is a reason why you wanted to keep Louis Varland stretched out? Well, he needs to get innings so he can be a starting pitcher. If we convert him to a reliever, it's really hard to turn him back. Same with David Festa, who's really, last year he didn't even throw 100 innings, David Festa. So they're trying to build up his innings. So that's the reason why it kind of is hard to say, well, we'll just convert him to the bullpen. Yeah, but then what about next year? You start next year and you're kind of looking at your total rotation depth, and you might be like, be kind of nice if we had those guys. Now all of a sudden, not that Ian Mejia is the reason why you could do that, but would be a piece of the puzzle. And anybody in this conversation, any kind of AA or higher pitching depth the Twins can acquire, I really do think can ease concern about moving guys like that into the bullpen. And Louis Varland is much more of a failed starter at this point than David Festa. Love Louis Varland. Hurts to say it, but I think at this point, they should see what they can do. I get why they haven't at this point. I get why they've kept starting him, because that rotation depth, I think, again, a lot with some of these guys breaking out in the high minors, that sort of eases concerns about their rotation depth. Simeon Woods Richardson, really taking hold of a rotation spot helps a ton too. David Festa, he's really kind of gotten me a little bit more believing in that he's going to be able to throw enough strikes to be a starting pitcher. But and again, I don't want to say he's been like a failed starter, but he's a guy that you can look at and imagine him throwing an inning or two at a time, and like Louis Varland, really thinking that could be something special. The Twins already have a pretty good bullpen as it is, but I think you could throw these guys in there, especially as potentially multi-inning guys to use down the stretch in the postseason, and that could be a huge boost. So, does Ian Mejia help out now? No, but he could open the door for the bullpen to get better in a roundabout way. I know it's a really strange point that I'm trying to make there, but I also just kind of like Ian Mejia anyway, as a trade target. Max Kepler, it is a little bit more of an addition by subtraction. That's not to say about Max himself. And again, I wish that we didn't have this kind of a conversation where the Twins were potentially trying to create payroll space, but it's just, I can really easily envision that being a thing. And if that is a thing, it's just, trading Max Kepler would just be a very easy way to address that. And then again, in my little fan fiction universe here, we are going to pivot and use that $4 million we saved on something else. And we'll talk about that in a video tomorrow. But I want to know what you think about all of that crazy dribble that just came out. Again, my creative fan fiction of Derek Falvey and Joe Polad and Max Kepler and all these characters that I'm turning them into. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think the Twins could survive without Max Kepler? I mean, I think they could. That's not throwing shade at Max. He's been great. He's been inconsistent over his Twins career, but it is what it is. You're getting great defense out of him. You're getting pretty much league average hitting, a little bit better against right-handed pitching, of course. But I think you can stick Matt Wallner out there. I think you could once Royce Lewis comes back, you can move Brooks Lee to second base. Well, now all of a sudden Willie Castro is a full-time outfielder, if you want him to be. So that really changes the outfield outlook too. There's layers upon layers of depth that the Twins have in terms of position players at most places, and Max Kepler being a guy that you can not only realistically think you can replace internally and create that payroll space. that's pretty tempting. Now, I'm sure at this point, maybe people are thinking, well, what about Kyle Farmer? That seems like easy money to get rid of. I don't know that anybody's taken on Kyle Farmer's money at this point. Somebody probably was going to ask that question, and I just don't. I think if you're trading Kyle Farmer, you're probably eating the rest of his salary. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But let me know what you think. Thanks so much for checking this one out. Really appreciate it. We'll talk again tomorrow.